You're blocking the elevator, ma'am. Some of us have actual work to do. The woman who said it was 26 years old wore heels that cost more than a car payment and had never once been told no by anyone who mattered. Her name was Candace Whitmore, junior partner at Whitmore and Langford, and she said the word ma'am the way other people say move. The woman she said it to was 51 years old, carrying a gray cart loaded with cleaning supplies and wearing a uniform the color of old grass. Her name was June Ellerby. She stepped aside without a word, the way she stepped aside from everything in that building. Quietly, completely, without leaving a mark. Candace walked into the elevator without looking at her. The doors closed. June pushed her cart to the service entrance and took the stairs. She had been taking the stairs at Whitmore and Langford for 7 years. The firm occupied floors 18 through 22 of the Alderton Tower in downtown Indianapolis, Indiana. It was the kind of building where the lobby marble was imported and the cleaning crew arrived before sunrise, so no one important had to watch floors get mopped. June Ellerby arrived at 4:45 every morning. She unlocked the service door with a key that had her name taped to the grip in her own handwriting, and she moved through the offices the way rivers move through landscapes, around obstacles, through narrow places, leaving things cleaner than she found them. She was not a small woman, not a large one either. She was the kind of person rooms forgot to notice, which she had decided a long time ago was either a curse or a gift, depending on the day. She had a system. Floor 22 first, while the air still smelled like last night's ambition. Then down, level by level, timing her cart to the freight elevator, so she never crossed paths with the attorneys arriving in their pressed collars and their certainty. She knew which partners drank too much by the number of glasses left on their desks. She knew which associates stayed past midnight by the takeout containers. She knew the firm better than the partners knew each other. She also knew things about the law that she had not told anyone at Whitmore and Langford. But that is not where this story begins. It begins with Candace Whitmore and the particular talent some people have for making a stranger feel worthless before 9 in the morning. The first time had been 18 months ago. Candace had spilled her coffee walking fast through the hall and looked at June the way you look at something that jumped out of the floor at you. Watch where you park that thing. The cart had been against the wall. June had said nothing. The second time was the following spring. A deposition had run long. Candace was behind, furious, and June happened to be buffing the hallway outside the conference room. Can you not do that right now? Some of us are working. June rolled the buffer to the far end of the hall. She waited. She came back when Candace was gone. The third time was the elevator. There were many other times between those, smaller ones, the kind that don't leave bruises. A look held too long, a door not held at all, a name never learned, because why would you learn it? In the break room, other staff had noticed. Renata, who worked reception and had been at the firm 11 years, had seen most of it. She liked June. June always rinsed the coffee carafe before she washed it. June remembered that Renata's daughter had a spring recital and asked how it went. Once, Renata had watched June stop in the hallway outside the paralegal's bullpen because a young man named Tobias Webb was hunched over a brief, both hands in his hair, clearly lost. June had looked at the page from the doorway, said one sentence, "Check the jurisdiction footnotes on the second exhibit. The site is pulling from the wrong circuit," and walked on before Tobias could turn around. He found it. He fixed it. The partner who reviewed it never knew it had been wrong. Tobias told Renata what happened. Renata mentioned it to no one above her pay grade, because she was smart enough to know it would only make things complicated. But she watched June Ellerby a little more carefully after that. June lived 40 minutes from downtown in a 2-bedroom house on a street where the maples had grown wide enough to touch over the road. The house was paid off. The second bedroom had been empty for 3 years. The walls in the hallway held no trophies. What they held was simpler. A child's drawing, framed, a crayon house with 4 people outside it and a yellow sun in the corner. Below it, a photograph of a woman in a graduation gown standing next to a girl of about 9 who was grinning so hard the photo almost moved. The graduation gown was June's. She had graduated from Indiana University School of Law in 1999, top third of her class. She had clerked for a federal judge in the Southern District. She had made associate at a firm downtown that no longer existed, worked 20-hour days, won cases she had no business winning, and lost one she should have won easily. A factory worker, famed Harold, who had been let go 3 weeks before his pension vested. She had the law on her side. She had the facts on her side. She did not have the partner on her side because the partner owed the company's general counsel a favor, and Harold's case was the favor being paid. Harold lost. June filed a bar complaint. The partner buried it. June was asked to resign before the complaint could attach to the firm. She had been 34 years old with a daughter in 2nd grade, no savings because law school debt had eaten everything, and no letter of recommendation from the only firm where she'd ever worked. She passed the bar in 2 states and couldn't get a callback. She did not talk about this. It was not a thing she carried in her hands where people could see it. She carried it the way she carried the key to the building, tucked away, present, always there. She took the job at Whitmore and Langford because it paid steady and she needed steady. Her daughter, Priya, was 9 years old and needed new shoes and a mother who came home at the same time every night. That was 17 years ago. Priya was grown now, teaching biology at a school in Cincinnati, calling every Sunday. June stayed because she knew how to stay, because the work was honest, because she had discovered, slowly and without ceremony, that mopping a floor for a living did not make her less than what she had been. It just made her invisible, and invisible people see everything. The case that changed things started the way most disasters do, quietly, in a room where no one thought anyone important was listening. It was a Thursday morning in October. June was working the 21st floor, the associate's floor, earlier than usual because a water leak the night before had pushed her schedule forward. The conference room at the end of the hall was being used for what the partners called a strategy session, which meant the door was closed, but the transom window above it was open 2 inches to keep the room from overheating. June did not intend to hear what she heard. She was wiping down the baseboards 12 feet away when the voice of Philip Noland, managing partner, name on the wall, corner office, came through the transom as clearly as a radio broadcast. The Aldrich family doesn't need to know about the secondary trust account. By the time the estate clears probate, there won't be enough paper trail to follow. A second voice. Gerald Langford, senior partner, Candace's father. The daughter is already asking questions. The estate attorney we referred her to? Is he manageable? He's a friend of the firm. Good. Then this ends quietly. June set down her cloth. She was 51 years old and she had spent 17 years being furniture in this building. Her hands were very still. The transom window did not move. She picked up her cloth and finished the baseboards and pushed her cart to the service elevator and rode it to the basement without making a sound. She sat in the supply room for 6 minutes. Then she went back to work. But that night at her kitchen table, she opened a laptop she had not used for anything more than grocery orders in 2 years, and she typed 3 names into a legal database she still paid $40 a month to access out of a habit she had never been able to explain to herself. Philip Noland, Gerald Langford, the Aldrich estate. By midnight, she understood what she had heard. The Aldrich family had lost a patriarch 2 months earlier. Rowan Aldrich, 78 years old, founder of a regional manufacturing company. His estate was being managed by Whitmore and Langford. There was a daughter, Beverly, mid-40s, who had been asking questions about a secondary trust that did not appear in the documents she had been provided. There was a reason it did not appear. June read the estate filings, the trust documents, 2 years of correspondence, and a corporate disclosure the firm had filed under a subsidiary name. She read until 2 in the morning. Then she closed the laptop and washed her hands and stood at the kitchen sink looking at the dark yard. She knew what she had found. She also knew what would happen if she did nothing. She went to bed. She did not sleep. Renata noticed something different about June the following week. Not different in any way she could name. June still arrived on time, still rinsed the carafe, still moved through the building like water. But her eyes had changed slightly, the way eyes change when someone is holding something that requires both hands. On a Tuesday afternoon, June was in the copy room on 21 when Tobias Webb came in to use the machine. He was a third-year associate now, and he had not forgotten the footnote correction. He said hello the way people say hello to someone they owe something to. Tobias, June said, and she almost stopped there, because once you say a thing, it cannot be unsaid. But Harold from the factory was still somewhere in her chest. And there was a woman named Beverly Aldrich who was getting the same answer Harold had gotten. Everything is in order, ma'am. Trust the process. This is how estates work, while the process was being managed by people who had already decided what Beverly was entitled to know. If someone at this firm were misrepresenting assets in an estate, June said, who would that get reported to? Tobias went very still. He was 28 years old, and he was smart enough to hear exactly what was inside that sentence. The State Disciplinary Commission, he said, carefully. Or, depending on the nature of it, the U.S. Attorney's Office. If there's criminal fraud involved. He looked at her for a long moment. Why? I'm asking in general, June said. She picked up her cart and left. That night she found Beverly Aldrich's phone number through the public estate filings. She did not call from her own phone. She drove to a gas station 2 miles from her house and used a payphone that she had not known still worked until she tried it. Beverly answered on the third ring. June spoke for 4 minutes. She did not give her name. She told Beverly 3 things: what account to ask about, what documents to request, and the name of the attorney at the firm who was assigned to her father's estate. There was a long silence on the line. Who is this? Beverly asked. Someone who's been in your position, June said. Not exactly enough. She hung up. She drove home. She made tea and sat with it until it was cold. Beverly Aldrich moved fast, which June had not counted on but probably should have. Beverly hired outside counsel, not a friend of the firm, and that attorney filed a discovery request within 2 weeks. Philip Noland had the request on his desk by Monday morning. By Tuesday, the firm was in emergency partner meetings that June could not hear because they were held on the 22nd floor in a room with no transom window. What she could see was the result of those meetings. On Wednesday, Candace Whitmore walked the 21st floor for 90 minutes with a face like a surgical instrument, pulling files, speaking to no one. On Thursday, a man June did not recognize arrived with a hard case and spent 4 hours in the server room. On Friday, Renata called in sick. That was unusual. Renata had called in sick once in 11 years. June mopped floors and said nothing and watched everything. She also did one more thing. In the quiet of a Thursday afternoon, when the building was between the lunch crowd and the late-day rush. She had been making copies of documents for 7 years. Supply orders, maintenance logs, cleaning schedules. The copy machine on 21 required a key code. June had her own code. She had never misused it. She used it once now. She did not take originals. She took nothing that belonged to anyone. What she did was photograph, with a phone she had bought at a drugstore and never registered, the scheduling log she had found in the recycling bin outside the server room. A log that showed who had accessed which files, and when, in the 48 hours after Beverly Aldrich's attorney filed the discovery request. The timestamps told a story. She sent the photographs to an email address she had created that morning from the drugstore phone over the gas station's Wi-Fi. Then she removed the SIM card, put the phone in the supply room trash, and went back to mopping. Candace Whitmore found out about the anonymous call to Beverly Aldrich the way she found out about most things, through a combination of money and fury. The outside counsel had mentioned a tip from an unknown source. Candace told her father, who told Noland, who said quietly, Someone in this building talked. The list of people who knew about the secondary trust was short: the partners, 2 associates, 1 paralegal, and the building's cleaning contractor. Nobody said it out loud. First, these things move like weather. They gather before they break. But on a Monday morning, Candace Whitmore stepped off the elevator on 21 and walked to where June was replacing a liner in the hallway waste bin, and stood close enough that June could smell her perfume. "I need to ask you something," Candace said. Her voice was a thing with edges. "All right," June said. "Have you been going through files on this floor?" "I clean this floor," June said. "I don't go through files." Something was photographed from the recycling outside the server room. "I collect recycling," June said, "and I bring it to the basement. I don't photograph it." Candace looked at her for a long time, the kind of look that is meant to make you feel it. "Be careful," she said, "about where you push that cart." June looked at her without flinching, because she had been not flinching at things for a long time, and she was very practiced at it. "I'll be careful about the cart," she said. "You might want to be careful about the transom on the 21st floor conference room. It sits open about 2 inches in warm weather." She pushed her cart to the freight elevator and did not look back. She knew, walking away, that she had just told Candace Whitmore something. Not everything, not her name, but something. She had decided at some point in the past 3 weeks, without quite choosing the moment, that she was done with invisible. The complaint to the disciplinary commission arrived 11 days later. It was not from Beverly Aldrich's attorney, though his filing was part of it. It came from Tobias Webb, third-year associate at Whitmore and Langford, who had spent 2 weeks quietly pulling every document he could access without triggering the firm's monitoring protocols, and had found, on his own, enough to put 4 paragraphs in a filing that would outlast his employment. He submitted it on a Friday afternoon from a public library, 2 miles from the office, on his lunch break. By the following Monday, he had been let go. "Performance concerns," the letter said. Tobias cleaned out his desk and shook hands with the people who offered them and was escorted to the elevator by building security. June was mopping the lobby when he came through. He stopped and looked at her. "I found the secondary account," he said quietly, while the security guard waited by the door. "I don't know how, exactly. I just knew where to look." June kept mopping. "That's good," she said. "The footnotes will matter." He looked at her for another moment. Then he walked out into the October morning with his box of things and his integrity, which is a harder thing to carry than people tell you. The firm tried to make it quiet. These things usually are made quiet, if the money is large enough and the lawyers skilled enough. Settlements are signed. Press releases are crafted. The story that reaches the public is the one that sounds the most like an accident. This one did not stay quiet. The scheduling log, the one that showed a senior partner accessing estate files at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, 11 hours after the discovery request was filed, had arrived anonymously at the Indiana Supreme Court Disciplinary Commission, the U.S. Attorney's Indianapolis office, and the inbox of a reporter at the Indianapolis Star who covered the legal community and had been looking at Whitmore and Langford for 8 months, following 2 smaller complaints from former clients. The reporter called the firm on a Wednesday. By Thursday, Philip Noland had hired a criminal defense attorney. By Friday, Beverly Aldrich had been contacted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. What happened next took several months and is a matter of public record, so the courtroom details are not the point here. The point is what happened inside Whitmore and Langford on the Tuesday morning before the story broke. When Gerald Langford called a staff meeting and told every non-partner employee that any contact with the press would constitute a breach of confidentiality and result in immediate termination. June was mopping the lobby floor when the meeting was held upstairs. She was not invited. She was not considered. She was not in the room. She was also the reason the room existed. Candace Whitmore came through the lobby at 4 o'clock that afternoon with her father's name on the building directory behind her, and a face that had finally, for the first time June had ever seen, lost its certainty. She walked fast. She did not look at June. Then she stopped. She turned around. For the first time in 18 months of small cruelties in elevators and corridors, she looked at June Ellerby the way you look at another person. "You've been here 7 years," Candace said. It came out sounding like an accusation, or maybe a calculation. "7 years," June said. "What did you do before this?" June considered the question, which had not been asked with kindness, but was the right question. She thought about Harold, about the brief in the copy room, about the payphone 2 miles from her house, about the $40 a month she spent on a legal database so she would not forget what it felt like to know things. "I was an attorney," June said. Candace's face did something complicated. "Why didn't?" She stopped, started again. "Why are you here?" "Same reason you're here," June said. "I'm doing my job." She pushed her cart to the freight elevator. She took it to the basement. She sat in the supply room for a moment in the quiet, and she thought about Harold and Tobias and Beverly Aldrich, who by now had been told by outside counsel that the estate had been underdisclosed by nearly $2 million. She thought about her daughter Priya calling on Sunday, asking how the week had been. "Fine," she had said. "Quiet week." She almost smiled at that. The firm settled in the spring. Philip Noland surrendered his license and agreed to a civil penalty. Gerald Langford resigned before the disciplinary hearing and relocated to Florida, which is where certain kinds of men go when the buildings with their names on them start meaning different things. 2 associates who had known about the secondary account and said nothing received censures. Tobias Webb was reinstated by court order as part of the settlement terms Beverly's attorney had insisted on, citing retaliatory discharge. He was back at his desk on a Tuesday in April. He brought Renata flowers from a gas station, the kind with the cellophane still on, because he had heard she had vouched for his character in the commission's investigation. Renata accepted them and put them in a coffee mug because she didn't have a vase. Candace Whitmore was not named in the settlement. She had not been in the partner meetings. She had not touched the trust documents. Her name was on the wall by inheritance, not by wrongdoing. She was, as of April, the managing partner of a firm that had lost 2 of its named partners and most of its credibility and would spend the next several years being something other than what it was. On a Tuesday morning in May, she got on the elevator at the lobby level, and June Ellerby was already in it, cart parked to one side, heading up. The door closed. They rode together to 18. "I looked you up," Candace said to the elevator doors. June said nothing. "Indiana, 1999, Southern District Clerk. You won the Pemberton case in 2002. That was considered unwinnable." The elevator opened on 18. Neither of them moved for a moment. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" Candace asked. 7 years. You never told anyone who you were." June looked at her. "I told everyone who I was," she said. "Every day. You just weren't listening." She pushed the cart off the elevator. The doors closed behind her. She didn't apply for the position at first. Someone else told her to. The firm, under its new management structure and under the watchful eye of an oversight committee installed by the court, posted an internal compliance officer position in June. The job required bar membership in Indiana and 10 years of legal experience. It paid a real salary. It had an office. Renata printed the posting and left it on June's cart on a Monday morning without a note. June found it at 4:55 in the morning, still dark outside, on the 18th floor. She read it in the hallway under the fluorescent light, standing in her uniform, cart to her left. She read it twice. She applied on a Thursday. The interview panel included 2 outside attorneys from the Oversight Committee, a retired judge who had been appointed by the court, and Candace Whitmore. June wore the same suit she had worn to her bar admission in 1999. It still fit. She answered the questions plainly in the way that plain answers work when you are not trying to perform competence you already have. When the retired judge, a man named Arthur Fenn, 70 years old, eyes like a man who had heard everything and filed most of it, asked her why she had spent 7 years in building services while maintaining an active bar license, She looked at him and said, "I needed work that was honest and steady, and then I found out that the two things aren't as separate as most people think." Fenn looked at her over his glasses. He wrote something down. "The case that generated this position," he said, "appears to have involved an anonymous source. The disciplinary commission has noted that the information provided was specific, accurate, and came from someone with direct knowledge of this building's operations." He paused. "Is there anything you'd like to say about that?" June's hands were folded on the table. "I'd say that 7 years of being invisible in a building teaches you a lot about what happens when people think no one's watching." Fenn nodded. He wrote something else down. "And the bar license you've maintained during those 7 years," he said. $40 a month for database access, for 7 years. Why? She had not known he would know that. It was in the bar renewal records, a notation she had never thought to explain. She thought about Harold. She thought about Tobias. She thought about the transom window that had been open 2 inches. "Because I didn't want to forget what it was," she said. She was offered the position 11 days later. The letter was delivered to the building service entrance, addressed to J. Ellerby, maintenance staff. By the time she read it, the offer had already been accepted. She had accepted it 6 days before the letter arrived, in a phone call with the oversight committee, speaking in her ordinary voice, which was the voice of a woman who knew what she was saying. She did not make a speech. She did not post anything online because she did not have accounts. Renata threw a small party in the break room with a sheet cake that said "Congratulations, June" in blue icing, and it was attended by maintenance staff and 2 paralegals and Tobias Webb, who shook her hand and said, "I knew where to look, because you knew where to look first, and June said you did the hard part," and neither of them elaborated. Her new office was on 19. It was smaller than she might have imagined, which was fine. She brought her own coffee mug and a copy of the Indiana Rules of Professional Conduct that she had owned since law school. The spine cracked in 12 places. On her first morning in the office, she arrived at 4:45, because some habits are not about the job. She walked the floors once, all 5 of them, before the building woke up. She knew every corner, every scuff, every transom that sat open in warm weather. She stopped at the supply room on the way back and left a note for the overnight cleaning crew. "The buffer wheel on the 21st floor needs a new pad. The south hallway has a scratch running from the elevator to the copy room. Use the thicker compound." She signed it J. Ellerby, Compliance. She went upstairs and made coffee and sat at a desk that had her name on the door and waited for the work to begin. Here is what I have been thinking about since I heard this story. For 7 years, June Ellerby walked those floors carrying more legal knowledge than most of the attorneys billing $500 an hour above her. She corrected a brief. She read estate fraud through a 2-inch gap. She started the chain that unraveled a scheme worth nearly $2 million. And she did it while pushing a cart and being told to watch where she parked it. Nobody asked her name, not once in 7 years. Not until her name was on a bar record that someone finally looked up. There is a person like June in most buildings, in most institutions. There is someone moving through the margins of a place who sees everything the important people miss, who carries something they were never given the chance to use, who does the work that lets the rest of the building pretend the floors clean themselves. I wonder how many of those people have said something once and been ignored, have tried once and been turned away, have spent years making a choice between their dignity and their rent, and chosen their rent, and are still, in small quiet ways, choosing their integrity too. If this story sat in your chest a little, if there's someone in your office building, your hospital, your school, your neighborhood, who you've walked past 100 times and never once asked their name, maybe that's worth thinking about. Not because June needed anyone to save her. She saved herself and several other people and did it without asking for credit or a microphone. But because she should not have had to spend 7 years being a ghost in a building she understood better than anyone in it. Ask people their names. Listen when they speak. Worth doesn't announce itself. It just shows up at 4:45 in the morning and does the work until someone finally notices the difference.